Hello and welcome back to Librarian of the Rings. Today we are back in the Silmarillion with Chapter 11 of The Sun and Moon and the Hiding of Valinor. Welcome back, my name is Ben, I'm the librarian. Today we are here in the Silmarillion in Chapter 11, and like many chapters in the Silmarillion, you get exactly what's on the box. In this chapter, you're going to learn about the Sun and Moon, and you're going to learn about the Hiding of Valinor. The Hiding of Valinor is actually just a tiny part. The Sun and Moon is going to take up the bulk of this chapter, which is not all that long. You can get through it pretty quickly, and we won't have too much to go over today. So in this chapter, we are actually going backwards again. So we have spent a couple of chapters catching up with what the Noldor are doing, and them leaving Amon and trying to come to Middle-earth. So we've kind of had that. Last chapter, we took a look back at what had been happening to the Sindar, so Thingol and Melian's people, what had gone on with them, so that we can kind of get to the point where these stories can come together. Now we're taking another jump back to right after Melkor destroyed the trees, and we're going to find out what happened with the Valar there. So that's kind of the setting that we're in. Like always, we're going to go over some vocabulary, then talk about the major characters, then the major events, and then the major themes. There's not too many of them today, so let's go ahead and dive right in. First up, vocabulary. Now, we have covered a lot of the vocabulary words, so hopefully you're feeling pretty comfortable with them at this point, but there are a few that I want to cover. And the first one is some vocabulary words that you do not need to worry about. This chapter is about the Sun and Moon, and there are a ton of names for the Sun and Moon in this chapter, which is great, and they are wonderful names, but you do not need to try and keep track of them. All right, then a vocab term that you do is the long night. The long night is just a term referring to the time in between the darkening of the trees and the rising of the sun. And this is a time that is actually hundreds of years because the Noldor are able to travel all of the way to Middle-earth, both across the water and across the ice before the sun rises. And so it is actually quite a long time, but it's referred to as the long night because there was no light besides the stars at this point. Next word is the Pelori. The Pelori we've seen before. These are the mountains that surround Amon and protect it. And so the Pelori you're going to want to know about because they do play a role in the Hiding of Valinor. And then there's also the term Calicria. And the Calicria is the pass that goes through the Pelori. It's how the elves who live in Valinor are still able to see the sea and feel the sea breeze and that. And it's how they get back and forth from the sea if they need to travel that. So the Calicria, that's an important part. The Valar made that to make a pass through the Pelori. Now let's talk about the major characters. Now most of these characters we have seen before, but we just haven't maybe seen them a lot in a while, so let's review them really quickly. Most of them are going to be Valar. We have Manwë. Manwë is the Valar of Air, and he's the king of Arda. He's the one who's in charge of the whole thing that's going on in Arda, which of course is the entire world, not just Middle-earth. Next we have Yavanna. Yavanna is the Valar associated with living things, plants and animals, and we've seen her quite a bit. She's done some things. You're going to probably associate her most with the Ents if you're coming from the Lord of the Rings. Next we have Nienna. Nienna is the Valar who's always sad. Her main character trait is that she cries a lot. She's associated with sorrow and empathy. Remember, she's the one who pled on Morgoth's behalf in order to get him mercy because she does feel deeply and feel a lot of empathy for everything. Next up we have Aule. Aule is the Valar who is a smith. He is the father of the dwarves, so that's kind of his connection into the Lord of the Rings, and he is also the husband of Yavanna. So anything that needs to be crafted, Aule is going to be their guy. Then we have Varda. Varda is the Valar of light. She is the one who's most important to the elves because she created the stars, which the elves woke up under. And so they love the stars and they love Varda. You will know her name from the Lord of the Rings as Elbereth. Varda is also the wife of Manwë, and so she is quite important to the elves and to this story overall, highly associated with light. And then we have two that aren't Valar. They are Maiar, and they are associated with the Sun and Moon. So first up we have Aryan, and Aryan is a Maya spirit of fire, but one of the only spirits of fire that didn't go with Melkor. So a lot of the spirits of fire who were Maiar are associated with Melkor as Balrogs and later perhaps as dragons, although that's not quite as clear. And that is what makes Aryan really unique, is that she didn't go with Melkor, and Melkor actually fears her a lot. And she is going to be the Maya who is associated with the sun. She essentially drives the sun across the sky. And then lastly, we have Tilion. And Tilion is a Maya that is really associated with hunting and silver. And so he is the one that drives the moon across the sky. So those two are going to be important in this story, but they won't come up really a lot in any later stories. So it's really just for this one so we can kind of get the sun and the moon going. So then we have the major events. And the first major event is one where really you don't see a lot happening. And this is the Valar. Right after the trees are destroyed, they sit in thought council and it looks like they aren't doing anything. And Fëanor, of course, uses this to his advantage. He says, look, the Valar, they don't do anything. In fact, they are actually doing a lot, but it's just they are doing it through their thoughts. They don't need to physically be out and doing things all the time. They prepare things ahead of time in their thoughts, and then they go and do things. And the thing that they go and do after they finish their thought council is that Yavanna and Nienna are going to go to work on the trees. The trees, remember, have been destroyed by Ungoliant, who came with Melkor, and they are really dead. I mean, they are only mostly dead at this point, but they're about to be very, very dead.
There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead.
And so they are trying their best to coax something out of them. And they are able to.
Mostly dead is slightly alive.
Nienna cries on them, doesn't seem to do a lot. Yavanna sings to them.
He will listen to music.
And eventually they coax out of them a silver flower and a golden fruit. So one from each tree. And that is really critical because now they're going to, in the next major event, use these to create the sun and the moon. And of course, they need someone to help them with this. So Aule comes and he builds vessels to carry them across the sky. Manwë comes and he hallows these objects, the flower and the fruit, hallows them, and then Varda is going to put them up into the sky. So this causes the next major event to happen, which is the rising of the moon. The moon rises first, and 7 days later, the sun rises also. When the sun rises, Morgoth retreats underground. So Morgoth cannot stand the sun, so he retreats underground to protect himself and his minions from the sun.
How does it feel? Gone far.
And then after the sun and moon rise, well, there's just too much light in the world. It's no one ever gets to sleep, and that's a major problem. And so they do go ahead and they shift this. Before, the sun and the moon were just kind of ping-ponging back and forth across the sky, not a whole lot of time to sleep or anything like that. And now they make it so that they actually travel through the gates of night down below the earth and then come back around, so that it becomes this cyclical thing that we are kind of used to.
You're welcome.
It's really important that you understand at this point that Arda is not round. Arda is flat. It's not a globe like the earth we live on now. Even though it is going to become that earth later, right now it's flat. And so it's really just that the sun and moon are just going up, they're around, and they're coming back around. And so day in Arda is experienced all kind of together as the sun moves across the sky, and then all of Arda is having night. Now, the next thing that happens is Melkor decides that he will attack the moon. So he does attack the moon, and this is part of where like the darkness that comes across the moon happens, because Melkor is attacking it. Now, Tilion is always going to be triumphant over Melkor, but the fight is hard, and Tilion is not as strong as Arien. Arien, Melkor won't attack. Too afraid of her, and his minions are too susceptible to the sun's rays. So he will never attack her, but he will attack Tilion, but Tilion is victorious over him. So Melkor then decides that what he will do is he will create shrouds and fumes that will cover his land and protect his minions. These clouds and stuff that are going to come from Angband, that's where they come from, is trying to protect his minions and himself from the rays of the sun. And that's really it about the sun and the moon. The last thing, of course, is the hiding of Valinor, and this is where the Valar decide that, look, Melkor was able to come over and get into our land. We need to stop that, so we are going to raise up the Pelori, and the Pelori are going to protect us. So they make the Pelori huge, these huge cliffs, and then they think that no one will be able to get through again, which is great for them, but they keep the Calicria open so that the elves can get back and forth and can still feel the sea breeze. So they position a really large host, basically an army there, at the Calicria in order to protect it. And that's it for major events, and there's just two major themes that I want to touch on really quick. The first one is this collaborative creation idea. We've talked about this a lot, but all of the best things are made through collaborative creation. When something's done solo, like the Silmarils, it tends to lead to a lot of trouble and problems, even if the thing is amazing. But the best things are made in collaboration, and that's what we see the Valar doing here. They bring several of them together in order to create the sun and the moon, and ultimately that leads into the next theme, which is how light hinders the works of Melkor. So light will always be able to hinder him, and that's one of the main tools or weapons that they're going to use to fight against him is light. In this case, the light of the sun and the moon. And we will see many times where light is really important. Remember that the orcs can't stand the light. In The Lord of the Rings, orcs receive some tampering from Saruman, which allows some of them to be able to stand in the light, but that is very rare and kind of a very new development in The Lord of the Rings. For the most part, orcs burn in the sun and can't stand it, and you'll remember the trolls who turned to stone. The Hobbit.
How did the morning come so soon? We're done for.
That all has to do with light being the source through which they fight Morgoth. Okay, that's going to do it for us today. Be sure to drop any questions or comments you have down in the comment section below. Until next time, farewell wherever you fare. May your ears receive you at your journey's end.